type of the soil or the other additives and how they interact with the surrounding environment. Okay, so that is also very important, because if you don't know the reaction mechanism or the how they are reacting with the soils, and what is the interaction phenomenon with the other surrounding environment, because whatever things we are going to use, we have to implement in the field, and in the field there may be the different environmental condition which is not similar to the laboratory condition. So that's why we have to understand about their interactive mechanism with the other kind of the environmental in the environmental system. And then other is the obviously the incorporating or the mixing of the additive, how you are going to mix it with in the field. So that is very important. Okay, so generally we are talking about the mixing should be uniform and all those things. In laboratory it is very easy because we are taking very less amount of the material to test, but in the field we have to stabilize the bulk amount of the soil, okay, or the larger area. So in that case the mixing is very important. If you are not mixed properly, then you will not get the desired result. So that is also the important thing. And finally you can see here an understanding of how resulting engineered soil will perform. Okay, that is not this is related to the durability aspect, long-term effect, longevity potential. You have treated the soil, but what is their long-term effect? Because whatever project you are going to construct it or implement it, it will be for it will not be for the short-term period. It will go for the longer period. So that's why long-term stability or their consequences that we have to understand. So this point we have to understand before implementing any kind of this stabilizer in the field. So now why I told you to characterization is very important of the soil or any material, because when we talk about the soil, okay, when we talk about the soil, and the soil is having the two-phase material or the three-phase material, you can say. So you can see here it generally contains clay, sand, and the voids, or it may contains only clay or the voids, or sand or the voids. So if it is two-phase material, or it may be three-phase system. So now the things here is, if your soil contains sand and the silt, then there is not a big problem, big problem. Okay, but when your soil contains the clay, then you have to be very careful before using any kind of the stabilizer, because your clay may contain different type of the minerals, or different group of the minerals. Either it may contain smectite also has different type of the minerals like montmorillonite, vermiculite, mica. It contains mica like muscovite or the airlite, whatever. And it may contain the kyanite, so, or it may contains the different mix of the minerals. So you can see, imagine how complexity is there to deal with the clay material. Okay, now when we have to stabilize it, you have to use the water. So now imagine if this water, if you are going to mix this soil, or if this clay will be in the contact with the water, what will happen? Because this all mineral will interact with this water. As I already told you, what will happen? Why expansion will occur, or what will or a different mineral has their different specific area or cationic sense capacity. Okay, so depending upon the water affinity, maybe it will expand or something. There will be the change in the properties of the clay, or but more complexity will happens when it contain when this type of the minerals will be in contact with the contaminated water or other type of the liquid. So then again you can see there will be the complex phenomena. Okay, so now what we have to do, we are generally treating with the stabilizer. So again you can see the interaction mechanism of the chemical. So different stabilizer have their own interaction phenomena or the interactive mechanism. Okay, so now finally you can see their consequences. Now imagine what will happen, what will be the ultimate effect. Okay, so the main motive behind this one to say all of you is the clay is very complex material, and when we are dealing with the clay, we have to take care of the several phenomena or the several interactive mechanisms that we have to understand. So that's why characterization is very important. If you are not doing proper characterization before using the stabilizer, then maybe your final effect will be maybe different. It's not be so favorable as your requirement. So that's why we have to do the characterization. And other things is, suppose we have the montmorillonite, the clay contain the montmorillonite, and you can see here the montmorillonite or the halite or the kyanite. Okay, in the interlayer regime, it contains the different type of the cations. Like suppose montmorillonite contains the sodium ions in their interlayer regime, then it is called as the sodium montmorillonite. Or if there is the presence of the calcium in the interlayer regime, then it is called as the calcium montmorillonite. Similarly, the halite and the kyanite. Now you can see different, not only the presence of the montmorillonite, but depending upon the cation that is present into their interlayer regime, that also causes the significance different in the properties of the soil. So suppose you can see this is the one of the good example. Like this is the compressibility behavior of the this all mineral. So you can see here these two curves, simply these two curves. So this curve is belongs to the calcium montmorillonite. This curve belongs to the sodium montmorillonite. You can see the difference in the compressibility depending upon the application of the consolidation pressure. Okay, so you can see here, you can just imagine how difficulties are there to deal with the clay soil. Okay, so that's why characterization is very important. And we are like no in the when we are implementing any or constructing any things in the field, then maybe your soil or whatever soil that you are going to improve, it may interact with the other environmental condition like the salt, water, or different kind of the polar solution, or organic, inorganic solvents, salt. Okay, so these there are the complex behavior of the soil, so that causes you can see it's lead to the intricate engineering behavior of the fine grained soil like clay soil. So other fundamental things that we have to understand to know about the interactive mechanism of the clay soil with the other type of the stabilizer is the double diffuse layer. Because you can see the double diffuse layer is very important to know about the expansivity behavior of the soil or the problematic behavior of the soil or the arrangement of the particles, because this double diffuse layer controls all those things. Okay, so what is double diffuse layer? Because you can see here the double diffuse layer is nothing but it is the result of the clay, water, and the electrolyte interactions. Because clay is the negatively charged particle. Okay, you can see here, and when you this negatively charged particles attract the positively charged particles. So you can see here the positively charged particle is attached to the clay particles, and if there are more electrolyte solution will be there in the contact in the clay matrix, then what will happen? This positively charged particle will try to get away from the surface of the clay particle and get away from to neutralize the negatively charged particle. So then what will happen? There will be the reduction in the cation, and then there will be the increase in the concentration of the anion from the clay surface. So you can see at this distance there will be the equilibrium condition will be achieved. So that distance is called as the thickness of the double diffuse layer. And you can see here there is the this is the one of the simple formula which is given by the Goyle champion to determine the thickness of the double diffuse layer. And from this formula, you can see what are the different factors that can controls the thickness of the double diffuse layer. So that is the dielectric constant, Boltzmann constant of the medium, and the temperature, ionic concentration, electronic charge, or the ionic valence. So these all controls the thickness of the double diffuse layer. Thickness of the double diffuse layer. Now I will tell you about the why thickness of the double diffuse layer is important. Okay. So before that, you can see the other parameter that is more you can see have the great importance in the stabilization process. That is the pH. Okay. So you can see here your soil contains either it is predominated with the alumina or the silica, or maybe both are there. So generally soil contains both silica or the alumina. Now you can see here if your pH is less than 7, this is the neutral. You can see at neutral if pH is 7, you can see the solubility of the silica and the alumina. So at neutral, these two minerals are the two elements are the stable. Okay, there is no dissolution, or there is solubility is stable. So if pH is less, then you can see here there will be the soluble, alumina will be soluble, but you can see that there will be the silica is still insoluble. Okay, but you can see here if the pH of the system is more alkaline, then in that case you can see there will be the dissolution of the both alumina and the silica. Okay, alumina in the silica. So generally, whenever we are talking about the lime stabilization and whatever, I will talk later, because what lime causes, because it creates the alkaline environment. pH of the system is more, then only there will be the dissolution of the silica and the alumina from the soil that reacts with the calcium to produce the cementitious compound. So if the pH of the system is not alkaline or it is neutral, then there will be the dissolution of the silica, or the silica will not occur. Okay, so that's why the pH of the system is very important. Now you can see the consequences of the change in the thickness of the double diffuse layer. So if the thickness of the double diffuse layer is more, then your particle, the fabric of the particle, fabric is nothing but the arrangement of the different particles will be in the dispersed condition. But if the thickness of the double diffuse layer is less means the particle to particle distance is less, and it will the attraction force is more than the repulsion force. Then there will be the arrangement of the fabric or arrangement of the particles will be in the flocculated manner. So you can see here and the different parameter I already told you, electrolyte concentration, ionic valency, temperature. So these all causes the increase in the thickness of the double diffuse layer, and these all causes the decrease in the thickness of the double diffuse layer. So their effect on the, you can see the their effect on the repulsion and the attraction force, and that causes the change in the fabric of the soil. And we all know what will happen, the properties of the dispersed fabric and the properties of the flocculated fabric is significantly different. So this is the role of this double diffuse layer and the thickness of the double diffuse layer. So now there are different techniques that are available to characterize the soil. Initially we have discussed about the mineralogy and the other physiochemical condition, and other is the structural development. Okay, that is that structural development does not only means the fabric, does not only means the arrangement of the particle, but what are the different interparticle forces are there, okay, to arrange these particles. So that causes that is called as the combined effect of the fabric and the interparticle forces is called as the structure of the soil. So initially, as maybe if you remember, like whenever we have to classify the structure of the soil. Generally, we are classifying based on the sensitivity value. Okay, sensitivity value is nothing but the it is the ratio of the unconfined compressive strength at the remodulated state to the original state. So you can see here the sensitivity value. You can see depending upon the different sensitivity value. Generally, we are classifying the soil. This is the the older technique. Nowadays, it's that there are very highly sophisticated equipments or the machine or the techniques are available, so that you can you can characterize the soil based on their structure, or you can easily examine the fabric or the arrangement of the particles or the voids or the pore within the soil matrix. So you can see here whatever the soil type, either residual or the transported or the compacted soil, okay, it has their own initial structure. Okay, but depending upon the environmental condition or the change in the environmental condition, like the chemical or the physical changes, it causes the change in the structure. So finally, you can see there will be the alteration in the structure. Now you can see here. Now you can clearly understand here, like whatever the properties of the soil is there at the initial structure, and after the change in the structure, upon the change in the chemical or the physical condition, and now the soil has not same engineering property. There will be the significant change in the engineering property. So that's why structure has very important role. And there are several techniques are available already. I discussed X-ray diffraction or the SEM, scanning electron microscope, okay, thermal analysis, okay, so that you can clearly you can characterize the soil in the very precise manner or the accurate manner, okay, or you can quantify the several things like the specific surface area, the amount of the mineral percent. Okay, so these all are the basic things that I told you. Now I'll be discussing about my second part of this lecture, different type of the industrial waste, how we can use different type of the industrial waste to stabilize the soil. So first I'll be talking about the potential of the fly ash to control the susceptible behavior of the calcium based stabilized soil. So as we all know, the fly ash is very effective to stabilize the soil. Maybe you have read several things, but there are certain things that certain environmental conditions are there in which you can get the adverse effect also. The effect there are adverse effect of the utilization of the fly ash also. So in this one, I will be talking about those things. So basically, before going to in this topic, so lime stabilization, as we know, utilization of lime causes the improvement in the not only improve the physical properties, but it also improve the engineering properties of the soil. So generally, you can see there are two reactions involved behind the lime stabilization. One is the short-term reaction, and other is called as the long-term reaction. So short-term reaction, there are three short-term reaction will happen. Short-term reaction means when you add the lime in the presence of the water, there will be a quick reaction will occur. So that is called as the short-term reaction. And the long-term reaction will take longer time to react. Okay. So that is called as the long-term reaction. So short-term reaction is two types. Basically, that is the cation exchange and other is the flocculation. Cation exchange, monovalent ion replaced by the higher valence, by the cations of the higher valence. You can see here when you add the lime is nothing but the maybe the calcium oxide, that is quick lime, or calcium hydroxide, that is the hydrated lime. So it contains the divalent ion, that is calcium, and if you mix with the clay, what will happen? The clay contains the monovalent ion, that is the sodium and the potassium. So this cation will replace this monovalent ion, and then you can see here there will be the flocculation or the agglomeration or the alteration in the physical properties of the soil will occur. So to modify the soil, generally it is 1 to 3% of the lime is sufficient. Now the carbonation, other phenomenon is carbonation. So basically this carbonation will occur if there is the climatic condition is very hot. Okay, so then it will produce the calcium carbonate, and this may cause sometimes it's causes the detrimental effect, or there is the marginal effect on the engineering properties or the physical properties of the soil. So now here other important the reaction is called as the long-term reaction, and that is the pozzolanic reaction. So pozzolanic reaction is nothing but it is the reaction in which there will be the dissolution of the silica and the alumina at high pH. So you can see here to understand, you can now clearly understood what is the importance of the pH. If the pH is low, then this there will then then the silica and the alumina will not dissolve from the soil. Okay, so so if pH is high, there will be the dissolution of the silica and the alumina, and that reacts with the calcium to form the different cementitious compound: calcium silicate hydrate, calcium aluminate hydrate, and calcium aluminate silicate hydrate. So basically you can see here the different kind of the silicate hydrated compounds or the aluminate hydrated compounds. These all are called as the cementitious compound, or the it has the gelatinous compound. So what will happen once this compound will form into the soil? It will bind the different particles to improve the properties of the soil. So generally 2 to 8% of the lime is required to improve the engineering properties of the soil. Okay, so now you can see here there are several factors that that can affect the formation of the cementitious compounds. That's why there is no definite the composition of this silicate hydrate or the aluminate hydrate. So these factors are the pH level or the solubility of the silica and the alumina, clay mineralogy, curing condition, and the time. So these all affects the formation of the cementitious compound. Okay, so that's why the lime soil reaction is not easy. It's also very complex, and you can see several projects. It's very popular, like in road construction, airport, or the treatment of the soils in the street, or the construction of the embankment. Several applications of the lime are there. Okay, it's beneficial application, you can say. Now the things is there are some you can say the disadvantage. Okay, disadvantage of the lime stabilization also. And in many part of the world, it has been seen, or it has been appeared that the damage occurs where lime stabilization has been done. So these damage are due to the heaving or the premature heaving or the swelling of the soil. So why this happens? Why this happens? Because if your soil contains the sulfate, any kind of the sulfate, and if you go for the lime stabilization or the calcium based stabilization, there will be the damage of your structure. So you can see in the picture several damage and due to the formation of the heap occurs in many part of the world. So why it happens? What is why it happen? What is the mechanism behind this one? What is the mechanism behind this one? And you can see this is the one of the demerit of utilization of the calcium based stabilizer, that is lime or the cement. Okay, so the possibility of the sulfate in this problem is in the soil may occur in the two way. One is there is the presence of the sulfate mineral in the natural form, means your soil contains sulfate. Other is migration of the sulfate contaminating fluids or the water or the liquid by any means. Okay, so means initially your soil does not contain any kind of the sulfate or the sulfatic minerals like gypsum or any kind of the sulfate ions, and you go for the lime stabilization or the calcium stabilization, but after some time, due to there will be the migration of the sulfate from the surrounding sources, and that also causes the sulfate contamination. So there may be the two possibility. Okay, so what is the sulfate bearing soil? What is the sulfate bearing soil? So if your soil contains the soluble sulfate more than 2000 ppm, then it is called as the sulfate rich soil or the sulfate bearing soil. There may be the different type of the or different sources of the sulfate mineral. basically it is broadly classified into two sources. One is the primary source, means there is the direct source of the sulfate in the natural form, either the different kind of the sulfate bearing minerals directly present in the soil in the form of the gypsum or the sodium sulfate or the magnesium sulfate, okay, or the potassium sulfate. And other is the secondary source, that is the byproducts of the oxidation, okay. Like for example, the oxidation of the pyrite causes the production of the sulfate minerals or precipitation of the sulfate mineral. You can see here, this is the reaction of this oxidation of the pyrite. Like no, it causes the production of this sulfur ion. And also in the if there is the if mining area is there, it will cause the discharge of the different alkaline water. Then it will react with the sulfuric acid, you can see here, and then there will be the formation of the gypsum. So many wherever mining industries are more, the sulfur the soil contains more sulfur, because like no, due to the oxidation of the pyrite. So in that area, if you go for the calcium based stabilizer, if you use the calcium based stabilizer, lime and all those things, you have to be very careful, otherwise it will cause the damage into the structure. So now what is the causes behind this one? What are the causes behind this one? So you can see here, this is a summary of the mechanism behind the sulfate induced heave. Heave is nothing but this is a swelling, induced swelling. It causes the excessive swelling into the ground. So that is called as the heave. So you can see here, soil contained alumina and lime contain the calcium, okay, and if there is the presence of the gypsum, like sulfatic source, it is the sulfur, okay, so, or the sulfate. In the presence of water or the moisture vapor, these all produce the ettringite mineral, okay, ettringite mineral, depending upon the temperature. If temperature is less than 15 degrees centigrade, then ettringite. If temperature temperature is greater than 15 degrees centigrade, then there will be the formation of the ettringite. Or if temperature is less than 15 degrees centigrade, then there will be the isostructural substitution of the alumina to the silica and sulfates to the carbonate. So that is called as the thaumasite, okay. But both are the highly excessive swelling mineral. It may swell up to the 137%. Okay, so now you can imagine how expansive mineral is there. Okay, so you can see the complex of the you can see the chemical structure of this ettringite mineral. You can see here, this is the sulfate ion, okay, and this is the 6 columns are there. 6 column of the calcium aluminate hydroxide is there, okay. In between there are the different sulfate ion, okay. So this chemical structure is basically forms the tubular or the column structure, which integrates the sufficient amount of the water, and that causes the expand that causes the swelling in swelling of this mineral, okay. But there are different factors that can affect the swelling behavior, swelling nature of the soil, or the swelling nature of this mineral, or the formation of the sulfate induced heave. So that is the clay mineral. So if your clay does not contain the alumina, then there will be the chances of the formation of the ettringite mineral is very less. Or the pH, pH should be like no more than 7 or more than 10.5, okay. Or water content, if water is not there, then the formation of this mineral is very less, okay. Sulfate and the temperature similarly. So initially you can see here, if you see the mechanism, it has been given that two phenomena is there. One is the crystal growth theory, and other is the hydration theory to like no to explain this the sulfate induced heat. But like no, there are several contradictions on this one, like which one is more predominant. Either the swelling will occur due to the crystal growth theory. Crystal growth theory means like no, the swelling will occur after long time, after longer duration, of the treatment, okay. So once this pozzolanic reaction will complete, then only there will be the chances of the heat. So that is the one theory, and other is the hydration theory. It basically causes the like no, it will it says that the whatever sulfate induced heave is there, it will initiate immediately, or it will cause like no, there will be the immediate formation of the ettringite, okay. So two theories are there, okay. So you can see here, so we have we have done some experiment on this one, or we have done some findings on this one, how this lime treated sulfatic soil causes the distress into the strength or the swelling behavior of the soil. So you can see here, this plot is plotted between the unconfined compressive strength versus the curing period. So we have tested the sample up to the 360 up to 1 year by using the different sulfate content, so that so that it will give you the understanding about the idea about the which sulfate content is, what is the effect of the different sulfate concentration, okay, on the lime treated soil. So 6% is taken because it is the optimum lime content you can get from the pH test. So this is, you can see here, without this curve shows the lime treated soil, so you can see here, increase in the curing period, there will be the increase in the strength of the soil. So that is the well-known phenomenon. So you can see, once there is the presence of the sulfate, this is the 1%, you can see here there is the drastically decrease in the strength at the 28-day curing period. But you can see here, if you see the short-term reaction, there will be the acceleration in the strength. Means gypsum does not cause the reduction in the strength, but it also acts as the accelerator, which can accelerate the strength initially, but it causes the damage to the long-term effect. So you can see here, after 28-day damage, again due to the low quantity of the sulfate, it again regain there is the regain in the strength of the soil. But once sulfate content is increased, you can say long-term effect of the sulfate into the strength of the soil. It causes the damage to the strength of the lime treated soil. So what are the consequences and what is the mechanism behind this one? You can see here, if there are the formation of the yttriumite minerals into the voids of the void of the soil at the shorter curing period. So that's why yttriumite causes the reinforcing, act as the reinforcing material, and you have seen the drastically increase in the strength at the shorter curing period. But you can see here at the it causes the, once the sulfate will dissolve, and then you can see there will be the formation of the different voids or the crack within the soil. So that causes the decrease in the strength of the soil. So these, by using this microstructure or the mineralogy, you can clearly find out the mechanism behind the mechanism behind the lime treated soil in the presence of the sulfate. So order is the volume change behavior of the lime treated soil. You can see here, I'll just tell you, you can see here, this is the swell versus time. You can see in the presence of the sulfate, there are different amount of the sulfate is there. So if the sulfate content is more, swelling is, you can see, drastically more. You can see here, this is the less sulfate content of 1%, 2%, 3%, or you can see here, this is the 6%. So swelling, you can see the drastic swelling in the lime treated soil in the presence of the sulfate. Okay, so now you can see here why this happened. You can see there is the formation of the yttriumite minerals into the voids of the soil. Different, depending upon the sulfate contents, the sizes of the yttriumite or the amount of the yttriumite mineral is different. If you see, and curing period also affects this formation of the yttriumite mineral. So you can clearly see in the microstructural examination. So this is 0 day with the 6% gypsum. This is 0 day with the 4% gypsum. So you can see clearly. Okay, so and we have given the and depending upon the curing period also, you can see here we have given the hypothesis mechanism why this happens, because the sample which is kept for the curing period for the different period of up to 28-day curing period, it causes less swelling, or you can see it causes no swelling even, and compared to the soils without kept for the any curing period. So two different mechanisms is there, because the sample which is not cured, it has the formation of the cementitious compound is less, so yttriumite can grow like freely. Ictringite can grow freely within the soil matrix. But when you get the soil for the curing, then you can see here there will be the sufficient time will be there to form the cementitious compound, and which then there will be the you can see there will be the binding of the particles. So the growth and the formation of the ictringite is restricted. So that causes the less swelling into the soil. So what are the different mechanism or the measure has taken or adopted initially to minimize this kind of the swell? So several techniques are there, but I'll be talking about the stabilization of these kind of the sulfate induced heat by using the fly ash. Either a fly ash is suitable or not, because in many cases we have seen the fly ash is suitable, okay, for to stabilize the soil. So what is the fly ash? Fly ash, as we know, it is the byproduct of the coal industry. Okay, coal industry in the thermal power it is generated from the thermal power plant. You can see the generation of the fly ash in our country. It is is gradually increasing, and accordingly we have to utilize it in the bulk quantity to minimize their negative effect or the negative effect to the environmental system. So you can see the microstructure of the fly ash. Okay, this is the bulk fly ash. This is the physical appearance. And if you take some sample and if you go for the microstructural examination, you can see the spherical particle of the fly ash, and it has the spherical, having it also contains some voids. Okay, there are voids within the particle, so that's why it has the lightweight material, and it also has the low specific area, low specific gravity, okay, compared to the soil. So now you can see the chemical composition of the fly ash. Generally it contains the silica, okay, and the alumina, okay, alumina, and it also contains the calcium oxide depending upon the type of the fly ash, okay, and other type of the toxic element also it contains, okay, is also there, okay. But basically we are as a geotechnical engineer, we are more interested in the presence of the silica and the presence of the alumina, because it requires to to have the for the interaction with the calcium based stabilizer to form the cementitious compound, okay. So and whatever silica is there, it should be reactive, so then only it will react. Otherwise there is amorphous silica is there, then it will not causes any effect on the chemical reaction, okay. So depending upon the presence of the calcium, the fly ash is classified into two. One is the class C fly ash and other is the class F fly ash. So class F fly ash generally contains low calcium, and this class C fly ash is called as the self-pozzolanic compound. So means without using any additional calcium additives, it will give you the good result, okay, compared to the class F fly ash. In class F fly ash, to activate this, to get the better result, you have to add the additional calcium based stabilizer such as lime or the cement. So utilization of the fly ash, you can see, that's why it's very popular, and many projects it has been using, okay. So because it will supply the different pozzolanic material elements like silica and the alumina. It has the low specific gravity, high volume stability, low compressibility, higher rate of the consolidation. So that's why it is very popular in many projects. You can see here in this one, okay. So in this work, we have taken the fly ash from the Raichur thermal power plant, and we have done the detailed characterization to understand about their mineralogical, microstructure, and the physiochemical properties. So the fly ash which we have taken is predominated with the mullite and the quartz, and there is the sufficient amount of the alumina and the silica is present, and you can see the spherical particle of this fly ash, okay. and the specific gravity is 2.14, and you can see here the chemical composition shows like no the calcium the quicklime, that is calcium hydroxide percent, is very low. That's why it is classified as the class F flies. So that's why whatever you have earlier we have seen the like no the presence of sulfate causes the damage to the strength. So that's why we have taken the fly ash, or we have treated the lime treated sulfatic soil with the fly ash to check either fly ash causes the fly ash can minimize the reduction in the strength or not. So here you can see here these all are belongs to the sample which contains the low lime. Low lime is like no below the optimum lime content. So you can see there is the marginal influence on the strength, but you can see here these two are contains the optimum lime content. So this dotted line is with fly ash. We have initially taken the 10% fly ash only to see the consequences, and this line is without fly ash. It's only lime treated soil. Lime treated soil in the presence of the 1% gypsum only. So you can see here in the fly ash will give you the acceleration in the strength, acceleration in the strength. Okay, and afterward there is the decline in the strength at 28-day curing period. So we have checked up to the 1 year to see the long-term effect, and we have clearly seen the beneficial effect of the fly ash. So here you can see these two curves. This curve is without fly ash and this curve is with the fly ash. Whatever reduction in the strength happens at 28-day curing periods, with addition of the fly ash, it increases. Similarly, the fly ash increases the long-term effect also. So means from the strength point of view, it is good. It will minimize the reduction in the strength caused by the presence of the sulfate to the lime treated soil. So we have to understand the mechanism behind this one. We have done the several XRD analysis on this one to check how there will be the transformation in the, or there will be the changes in the mineralogy or the formation of the new compounds. So we have seen there are the formation of the cementitious silicate hydrated compound or the aluminate hydrated compound, and there is also formation of the ettringite mineral depending upon the sulfate content and the curing period. So similarly, you can see here this all image shows the lime treated soil with the fly ash without gypsum, and this all shows the presence of the 1% gypsum. So you can see here clearly the difference between two images by comparing it. So if there is 1% gypsum, you can see there is the formation of the ettringite minerals. With the curing period, the size of the ettringite minerals is lower. Okay, this is after a 1 year curing period. So you can see here, and this is without the gypsum. So you can see here the beneficial usage of the minimum low amount of the gypsum on the fly ash on the lime treated soil with the fly ash. So you can see clearly these two. Okay, this is the 14-day curing period. Okay. So that's why it minimized the reduction in the strength of the soil by using the sulfate. But we have also checked either it will reduce the swelling phenomenon or not. So you can see here, I'll just show you this curve. So because this is very interesting. So this curve is basically lime treated soil in the presence of the only 1% gypsum. So you can see this is the swelling percentage. It's like about near about the 0.4 okay percentage. And to minimize this one, we have used the fly ash. Okay, we have used only 10% fly ash to see either it will causes the better result or not. Better result means it will minimize the swelling or not. But we have seen a very interesting result, or you can say the adverse effect of the fly ash. So you can see after using the 10% fly ash only, we have seen significant increase in the swelling. Significant increase in the soil. Okay, so it's like you can see it's surprising for us, because why it happens? Because fly ash is known for to stabilize the soil. So then why this fly ash has shown the negative effect or the adverse effect on the swelling? why it cannot minimize the sulfate induced heat? Because, and then we have seen the consolidation parameter like compressive index as well. So we have seen the fly ash treated soil or the gypsum treated soil has like no higher low compressibility index compared to the lime treated soil with the fly ash. So to understand the mechanism behind this one, I'll tell you with this SCM image so that you can understand in better way. So you can see here, once we have added the fly ash, what will happen? Fly ash supplies the alumina and the silica, as we know from the characterization of the fly ash. And we know the fly once there will be the supply of the additional alumina apart from whatever alumina is there in your soil, then what will happen? And alumina is favorable to form the ettringite minerals. Okay, so that's why we have seen the adverse effect. More alumina, the fly ash supply the more alumina, that causes the more formation of the ettringite. So that's why we have seen like no larger ettringite needles, and you can see the voids and larger voids within the soil matrix. So that's why we have seen the huge swelling in the sample, which has not kept for the curing. Okay, if the sample is, if before doing the swelling test, if you are going to cure the sample for the different curing period, even though there is the formation of the ettringite needles, you can see here, but because the curing period will be helpful to form the cementitious compound. So there is, you can see the predominant effect of the formation of the cementitious compound over formation of the ettringite mineral. So that's why the sample which is kept for the curing period, we have not seen any swelling. Okay, but overall you can see we have seen the adverse effect of the fly ash in terms of the minimizing the swelling behavior of the soil. So that's why I am telling you, we cannot blindly use any kind of industrial waste. Okay, so that's why we have to understand what is their consequences or the ultimate outcome. So that we have to understand. So then we are more curious to check either more fly ash content will be beneficial or not. So that's why we have gone up to 30% fly ash content, and you can see this is the curve which shows the strength of the lime treated soil upon addition of the fly ash without gypsum. So you can see here higher fly ash content is beneficial. Okay, it will give you the better result or the drastically improvement in the strength of the soil with the curing period. But again, I am saying you, if the fly ash is F class fly ash, and if you are not going to use the additional calcium, then it will not give you the improvement in the strength. So you can see here the dotted line. This dotted line has only soil and the fly ash treated with the fly ash. There is no lime or the additional calcium have been added. So you can see there is no much effect, even you are using more amount of the fly ash content. So that is the disadvantage of the, you can say, the class F fly ash over class C fly ash. Okay. So now we have checked the different amount of the fly ash in the presence of the sulfate also, and finally we have done experiment up to 1 year, and finally what is the conclusion we have obtained from this result is to minimize the to minimize the effect of the higher sulfate content, we have to use the higher fly ash, otherwise it will give the detrimental effect. Okay, so you can see from this figure also, you can see this all sample does not contain the gypsum, this is only fly ash. So how there is the transformation of the microstructure with the curing period or the curing period or with the use of the different fly ash content. So this is 20% fly ash, this is 30% fly ash content sample. Okay, so you can see clearly with the curing period. Okay, so if in the presence of the sulfate, you can see how there is the formation of the different ettringite minerals with the curing period, the presence of the voids and all those things. Okay, so and then we have understood the mechanism behind the changes in the strength of the soil with the use of the different kind of the fly ash in the presence of the various sulfate contents. Okay, so if anybody is interested, so you can go through these all results have been published in journals, okay, in applied clay sciences or other journals like geotechnical testing, geotechnical testing in ASTM. Okay, so you can go through it for the detailed knowledge, and if any questions are there, you can ask me. Okay, later also or after this presentation also. So other is then we have checked the swelling phenomenon also. So we came to the conclusion that fly ash cannot eliminate the sulfate induced heave, but 20% fly ash is beneficial. It will give you some reduction in the swelling behavior of the soil, but it will not completely eliminate the sulfate induced heave. So that is the again fly ash, we have come to the conclusion fly ash cannot control, okay, the sulfate induced heave. Okay, so you can see we have we have came to some mechanism why it happens, why a different kind of the fly ash gives the different results. Okay, so three things is predominant. One is the amount of whenever we are using the fly ash content, okay, it will disturb the matrix of the initial matrix of the soil, and the formation of the cementitious compound and the growth of the tringite needles. These all three phenomena are okay interrelated with the curing period or the amount of the fly ash content. So that's why there will be the changes in the properties of the soil with the change in the fly ash content. You can see clearly in the microstructure. So this is the 10% fly ash, this content 20%, this content 30% fly ash. So you can see if you compare it qualitatively, you can see the more compacted matrix we got by using the 20% fly ash. So that's why we have seen the better result by using the 20% fly ash content. Okay, so this again published in the Soil and Foundation Journal. So you can go through it if you are interested. So other, I will go quickly the application of the marble dust. Okay, application, I hope the time is there. Okay, so I'll go quickly with the marble dust because marble dust is very is also kind of, you can say, the waste material, okay, generated from the mining marble mining industry, and you can say in the Rajasthan is is very highly affected with this kind of the waste, marble mines generated waste. So and it it damages, it causes the air pollution, okay, and it also causes the increase in alkalinity in the soil, and thereby the poor fertility of the vegetation and the crop. It also causes the water clogging caused by the reduction in the porosity, because it will the finer particle of the marble dust causes the blockage of the pore of the soil, so it reduces the permeability, and that causes the water logging. Okay, so that's why we have to utilize, and you can see the production, bulk production of the marble dust every year. Okay, so that's why we have to use the bulk, you have to use the marble waste in the bulk quantity, and where we have to use the marble dust in the bulk quantity, if you are going to use in the geotechnical application like to prepare the subgrade or the embankment. Okay, so other applications are also there in you can find of this marble waste in the concrete mix, or the ceramic, the production of the ceramic tile, or the cement. Okay, so various applications are there, but I'll tell you about the geotechnical perspective to either you can use the marble dust to improve the properties of the soil or not. Either it is suitable to for the subgrade preparation or not. Okay, so because there are many beneficial beneficial properties or characteristic of the marble dust. Okay, so it contains basically predominated with the calcium carbonate, magnesium carbonate, and the calcium oxide or the magnesium oxide. Okay, so that is the one thing. And other thing, but even though there is the presence of the different calcium ions, okay, in the marble dust, but it is chemically inert material. Okay, it will not give you it will not causes any reaction like cement long-term reaction to form the cementitious compound or not. Okay, so that's why somehow it's we have to understand the things how, by which means we have to use it. Okay, by which means we have to use it. Okay, how can we how can we improve the pozzolanic nature of this marble dust. Okay, but still, if you see the literature, if some literature says it is not fully chemically inert. It will give you some, like, it will react with the water, whatever calcium is there. But many research said it is chemically inert material. So again, it is the matter of the debate. Okay, it matter of the further research. Okay, but the major beneficial properties of this marble dust, it has the high shear, it has the, like, good angle of friction, and it will give you the higher shear strength. So you can see the angle of friction is up to the 44 degrees centigrade, which is very good to, like, have the better to get the better shear strength parameter or properties. Okay, it's highly beneficial. So that's why we can use the marble dust for the geotechnical application basically. But the disadvantage is it has a poor gradation of the particles. Okay, so that's why most of the time marble dust is not beneficial to be used as a geomaterial. When I'm talking about the geomaterial, means a geotechnical material, as a geotechnical, like soil or the other kind of the geotechnical material. You cannot use marble dust alone for the geotechnical application, because it has the poor gradation of the particles. Okay, even though the angular friction is more, but the cohesion properties is negligible. So that's why we thought to check the either marble dust will give you the better response against to improve the properties of this expansive soil, like black cotton soil, or not. So we have you can see the properties of the black cotton soil. So, and the marble dust, okay, it is also collected from the it is Rajasthan. One of my PhD students are working in this one in the Manipal University, Jaipur. Okay, so this is the, like, if you can see here, the marble dust is predominated with the sand side particles, now more than 95%, you can say here. And the other is the specific gravity is also is higher than the clayey soil. Okay, but it is a non-plastic material. Okay, but the clay is the plastic material. Okay, and also it will give you the if you see the swelling phenomenon, it is like, it is non-swelling material. So so this is the, like, beneficial things of the marble dust in to improve the properties of the expansive soil or the black cotton soil. So we have done the detailed characterization of both material, and we can see the marble dust is predominated with the dolomites and the calcite and the quartz. So you can see the microstructural behavior of the soil. You can see the marble dust particles. Okay, so this is aspect ratio of the different size of the marble dust. You can clearly see here. Okay, and the angular pattern is also there. And this is the plateau particles of the monazite or the clay particles. So you can see. And other the chemical composition also you can see, and the marble dust is, like, predominated with the calcium and the magnesium, because the source is the dolomite. Dolomite is nothing, the magnesium. Magnesium will be there, so that's why the magnesium and the calcium is there. Okay. So we have again checked all the physical properties and the strength and the swelling or the severe behavior, so that either we can use the marble dust effectively or not. So we have seen it obviously it will improve the physical properties or the plasticity nature of the soil, because marble dust is non-plastic, and once you add this marble dust or the replace modify the soil with the marble dust, it will decrease the swelling phenomenon of the plasticity nature of the black cotton soil. And also we have done the swelling behavior. We have checked the swelling behavior of the soil, because black cotton soil is a swelling soil, as we have discussed. So we have done the both free swell index, because free swell index will take lesser time, okay, compared to the one-dimensional consolidator swelling test. So we have seen the use of the different kind of the marble dust. So you can see initially this is the soil has more than 2.5% swelling, but with the increase in the marble dust, you can see the swelling is drastically decreasing, decreasing. So means like no, it will it will marble dust will give you the beneficial effect on the reduction of the swelling behavior of the soil. So from the standpoint of view, we have like no, we have tested the sample about the different curing period by using the different percentage of the marble dust, because in nowadays also like no, there is no protocol of using this marble dust content. So we are not sure how much percentage is like no give you the better result or the optimum result to improve the strength behavior of the soil, or to minimize the swelling percentage of the soil. So that's why we have like no taken several percentage. You can see it's the rigorous work that has been done by my students. So you can see here this up to the like no between 10 to 20% is giving more like no strength compared to the like no increasing quantity of the marble dust. So it is again like no, you can say this percentage is optimum content from the strength point of view. And why it happens? Because marble dust is if you are adding more percentage of the marble dust, then whatever cohesive nature of the soil is there, it will like no reduce, because marble dust predominated with the sand particles, and this black cotton soil is predominated with the clay particles. Okay, so 10 to 12% will give you the better gradation. If you are adding more, it will reduce the cohesive nature of the soil and increase the like no granular nature of the soil. Okay, and also there will be the poor gradation of the soil. Okay, poor gradation. So that's why we have seen like no decrease in the strength by using the higher amount of the marble dust. So then we have gone to the micro mineralogical analysis of the different samples. As I told you, like no, the calcium is inert material into the marble dust. That's why we have not seen like no any changes in the like no the parent peak of the parent peak changes in the mineralogical, or you can say the parent mineral that is present into the soil of the marble dust. Okay, with the curing period, or like no by taking different amount of the marble dust. Okay, so that these things like no again it's confirmed with the XRD. But if you see the microstructural analysis, you can see how the matrix of the soil is changing upon the change upon the with the marble dust, or with the curing period as well. So you can see here, this all this contain 5% marble dust, this contain 25% marble dust, this contain 80% marble dust. So you can see, so this 25% is giving you the like a better compacted matrix or interlocking matrix. So you can see here, these all are the marble dust particle which is like no filled in between with the like no occupied with the clay particles. Okay, it's give the better interlocking or the compacted matrix compared to the lower percentage of the marble dust. So similarly with the curing period, you can see here. Okay, what is the consequences? So also we have seen the thermal analysis. We have checked the chemical composition also. Again, we have seen the like in all sample we have seen the calcium content, but again we are not sure either this calcium is like fully inert, fully acting as the inert material, or it has like it is contributing towards the formation of the cementitious compound or not. Okay, so it is still a matter of the like research. So you can see to quantify the things, to quantify the things, we have done the thermal analysis of the soil by using the derivative thermal analysis or the thermogravimetric analysis. So you can see here this is the black cotton soil, okay, and this is the marble dust. So you can see the loss in the mass of the marble dust when we increase the temperature up to the 1000 degrees centigrade or 900 degrees centigrade. Okay, so you can see here, once you add the marble dust into the soil, you can see there is the loss of the mass. Why loss is happened? Because the your marble dust is predominated with the dolomitic minerals or calcium is there. Okay, so so that's why with the increase in the temperature, there is the like a loss in this calcium content into the marble dust. So that's why you can see the significant. So from this technique we can quantify the things also, like how much percentage of the there is the loss of the mass due to the addition of the marble dust. So that also we can see. So it is also we can publish in the soil and foundation, so you can go for more details. And then we have for the subgrade application, either it is suitable or not. For that we have checked the CBR, both on both the unsoft CBR and soft CBR for the for the maximum possible adverse condition. Okay, so and two type of the soil here we have taken. One is the sandy type of the predominant soil, and other is the black cotton soil, to check the effect of this marble dust in both different properties of the soil. So here we have seen marble dust is not has less effect on the CBR value of the sand, or you can say there is the decrease in the CBR value of the sand, but it is beneficial for the black cotton soil. You can see black cotton soil in both soft and unsoft soil. It will give you the higher CBR value. At optimum value we have obtained at 60% line cutting. So here one thing we have to understand is which that's why desired result, which result you want to obtain. Either you are more concerned about the CBR value or the unconfined compressive strength, because on unconfined compressive strength we have obtained at 10 to 12% marble dust content, where CBR value, the optimum value, we have obtained at 60% marble. So and also we have checked this result with the IRC provision, Indian Road Congress guidelines, and we have seen this marble dust is beneficial to be utilized as a subgrade material. So this is also published already, so you can go through it. So I will go quickly with the red mud. Okay, so red mud either it is suitable for the subgrade application or not, because red mud is again the one of the one of the waste material. It is also called as the hazardous material. Okay, it is also called as the hazardous material, and because it has the high pH value. Okay, because it has the high pH value, the pH value of this red mud is 11 to 13. So it contaminates the soil due to its highly alkaline nature. Okay, and it also contains different type of the hazardous elements or the radionuclei. Okay, so that's why storage of this red mud or disposal of this red mud will again create the different type of the airborne diseases, or there will be the contamination of the groundwater. So that's why we have we have to utilize this red mud in the bulk quantity for the geotechnical application. So for that we have also done some experiment on this one. But before going to this one, I will just highlight here what is the general characteristic of the red mud, so that it will give you more confidence towards utilizing towards its utilization to improve the properties of the soil. So here you can see the typical geotechnical properties of the red mud. So the specific gravity, you can see is high specific gravity compared to the soil, and also you can see the other things is, you can see the liquid limit is 29 to 45%, and also other things I'll just show you is you can see this one, angle of friction. Okay, and other things is you can see the permeability of the red mud. So permeability is 2 into 10 to the power minus 7 per second, centimeter per second, means it is almost the properties is almost similar to the clayey soil, but it is not clayey soil. Okay, it is the waste material and hazardous material. Okay, because it contains different type of the heavy metal. You can see these are the heavy metals. Okay, and also it contains the alumina and the silica, which is beneficial for the pozzolanic reaction. Okay, so this will give you the more confidence about the its utilization in the subgrade reaction, subgrade preparation, or other kind of the construction. So here we have we have taken two materials, red mud and the fly ash. Because why we have taken fly ash? Because fly ash has capacity to absorb the heavy metal. Okay, fly ash has capacity to absorb heavy metal, and red mud contains the different type of the heavy metals, heavy elements. So that's why we have like try to neutralize the effect of this heavy metal of the red mud. So you can see this is like characterization of this both material. So you can see the fly ash is non-plastic material, but red mud is the plastic material. Okay, red mud is the plastic material. But if the more interesting things here is fly ash, you can see the pH value. Okay, so you can see the pH value. pH is of the red mud is more than 10, and the fly ash is around the 8. Okay, so once you are using the fly ash, it will neutralize the pH of the red mud also. So and that also like reduce the harmful effect due to the high alkaline nature of this red mud. Okay, and also you can see the electrical conductivity is 4 of the red mud, and the fly ash is 0.4 only. So, and you can see the XRD analysis or the mineralogical analysis. So red mud is predominated with the sodalite, geothite, hematite, calcite, and the rhyolite. Okay, and the fly ash is predominated with the mullite and the quartzite. So you can see the microstructural analysis also. This is the red mud, and this is the fly ash. Okay, so you can see the microstructure of this red mud. Okay, it looks like the clay particles. Okay, and this is the fly ash particles. Okay. And we have checked the compaction characteristic and all those things. So we have seen there is the with the addition of the fly ash, it causes the decrease in the dry density of the reduction in the dry density of the soil. Also, it decreases the optimum moisture content of the soil. So say, also you can see here the effect of the fly ash on neutralizing the pH. So initially the pH is here of the red mud. Once there is the increase in the fly ash content, there is a drastically reduction in the, you can say the pH value of the red mud. So then we have checked the unconfined compression strength of the soil with the different by taking the different amount of the fly ash content to find out the optimum value. Okay, and we have seen here again 10 to 12% is more beneficial. Okay, in terms of improvement in the strength. So based on the strength criteria, which is given by the Das in 1994. So the quality of the subgrade you can see here, the soft subgrade, medium subgrade, steep subgrade, very steep, hard. Oh, okay. So based on the unconfined compression strength value. So you can see here, this is untreated fly ash. Okay, the strength of the untreated fly ash. This is medium subgrade. This lies in the medium subgrade, but untreated red mud, it lies in the steep subgrade. Untreated means without using the fly ash. But the combination of the red mud plus 15% fly ash, that is optimum at 28-day cooling periods, you can it will give you the better performance in terms of the quality of the subgrade. So you can see here it lies in the category of the very steep subgrade. So this is the beneficial effect of the red mud with the fly ash content. So it is also published in Geotechnical Geological Engineering Explainer. So you can go through it for more detail. So the last content is the utilization of the slag. I will just take a few times on this one, because slag is like the byproduct of the steel industries. Okay, byproduct of the steel industry. There are different type of the classification of the slag is there. Okay, so in this one, today I will be talking about the ground granulated blast furnace slag. Okay, so these are the beneficial characteristic of the fly ash, slag. That's why you can see the wide application of this slag. Okay, wide application of this slag in various construction, for the road application. Okay, or to treat the wastewater. Okay, and it is also used for the soil improvement. Okay, but overall we have not seen its application to prepare the liner material in the landfill system. So that's why we have gone through this one. So before going to the liner material, we have to understand what is liner material, so that we will understand the other parts as well. Okay, so as we know, the landfill system is it's very popular to dispose the solid waste contaminations, whatever municipal solid waste is there, we have to dump it, and that is called as the landfill area or the landfill system. So initially you can see here, this is the old landfill system, and this is the modern landfill system. In older landfill system, we are simply dumping the waste into the ground, okay, by digging the ground, okay. So that causes that causes like that causes the very harmful effect, okay, on the underground water bodies or the environment surrounding environmental areas, okay, because this waste material generates the leachate, okay, leachate. So leachate it generates the leachate. Leachate is a liquid which contains the highly polluted elements, okay, elements in this. Either it may contains the alkali or the acid or the salts, okay. So that migrate into the ground and this pollutes. So that's why modern landfill system came into the picture. So in this one, what is generally doing is we have to prepare. We have to prepare the barrier system. We have to design some barrier system by using different type of the material so that it can control the migration of the leachate into the ground system to reduce the pollution, okay, and to reduce the contamination of the groundwater. So this liner material, you can say, this is called as the liner material or the barrier material, okay. Okay, so this is the major thing. So okay, so that's why we thought to utilize this slag, either we can use or not for the liner material, because initially if you see most of the case either a compacted clay has been used or the bentonite has been used or the bentonite sand has been mixture of the bentonite sand has been used for the liner material. So you can see here, this is the cross section of this larger view of the liner material. So different layers is there, different layer of the different material is there. So we are basically more focused on this one. On you can see the clay liner material, okay, clay liner material. So there are a different type of the liner system, double liner system or the single liner system, top liner system. Top liner system is this is the top liner system. It's called as the cover, okay, to migrate the penetration of the rainwater. And the bottom liner system is this one, okay, this one to migrate to control the migration of the leachate into the ground, which is generated by the waste. Okay, so different kind of the liner system are there, and it is being constructed depending upon the type of the waste, either it is hazardous waste or the non-hazardous waste. Okay, so here we can see the different drawback of the initially used liner material, like natural liner or the compacted liner, compacted clay liner or geosynthetic clay liner. So because whenever we are using only clay or the bentonite, it will causes the it will causes the shrinkage cracking. Okay, shrinkage cracking, and once crack will appear, the migration will happen. Okay, so that's why. And also clay has the less shear strength capacity. It cannot withstand the whatever load is generated by the waste. Okay, so that's why we have to take care on this one. Okay, the design parameter of the suitable landfill liner should be one. The major things is the hydraulic conductivity should be less, that is less than 10 to the power minus 7 centimeter per second. And to achieve this one, you can see these other properties should be like plasticity index should be 7 to 10%, compressive strength should be greater than 200 kPa, swelling percentage should be less than 4%, and other things are there. Okay, so that's why and you can see here the how to select the, because all properties you have to satisfy. So you have to compact the liner material at proper dry density and the optimum moisture content, because dry density influences the permeability of the soil. As we have basic soil mechanics, we have discussed, this is the weight of optimum, this is dry of optimum. Depending upon the different molding water content, the permeability value is different. Okay, so that's why this curve will show you like the how to select the suitable dry density and the optimum moisture content. So you can see this is the molding water content versus hydraulic conductivity, and this is the datum line, because 10 to the power minus 7 per centimeter per second you have to achieve. So again, it is fitted into this dry density and the molding water content. Similarly, this is the again there will be the further modification has been done in this one. Okay, and finally other parameters also has been introduced, like has been considered, like shear strength parameter and plasticity, and the shrinkage parameter has been also considered. And finally you can see this is the acceptable zone to use the liner material at particular dry density and the optimum molding. So this is the background of this liner material. So in this work we have taken the sand and slag, because sand is frequently it has been used with the bentonite to be used as a liner material, and here we have compared the sand bentonite result with the slag, so that to understand the how slag is effective to be utilized as a landfill liner material. And we have taken the bentonite also. Okay, it is also collected from the Rajasthan only. Okay, from the Bikaner. Okay, so you can see the comparison of the sand and the slag. Slag is a well-graded material, and the sand is the uniformly graded material. And also you can see the permeability value. It is in centimeter per second. It is minus. Sand is -4, 10 to the power -4. It is slag is 10 to the power -4, and the bentonite has the lower content, that is 10 to the power -11. But again, if you are using higher amount of the bentonite, it's very difficult to handle into the field. Okay, so because it is the highly plastic in the nature or highly swelling, compaction will be difficult if you are using higher bentonite content. So that's why we have used the nano clay also to see the effect of the nano clay in minimizing the quantity of the bentonite. Okay, and to improve the properties of the sand and slag. So several mineralogical and the microstructural analysis has been done to understand the basic mineralogy of the current mineralogy present into the sand, slag, and the bentonite and the nano clay. So basically, you can see bentonite and the nano clay is predominated with the montmorillonite. Okay, and the slag and silt is there is the presence of the in the sand is predominated with the quartz, and slag is predominated with the quartz, iron oxide, ferrite, and magnetite. This is the different type of the iron. So here also you can see the mineralogical structure, microstructure of this all material. You can see the microstructure of the slag. So you can see the why it is well graded. You can see the different size of the particle is there, and this is the angular particle. So it has good. It will give you the good interlocking behavior. Okay, it will give you the good interlocking behavior compared to the sand. Okay, you can see the sand and texture also. You can see sand is having uniform texture or a smooth texture. You can see, and compared to the slag, if you compare with the slag, you can see the texture of the slag. And these are the nano clay particle. And this you can see, this is the this halo this tubular structure is nothing but the halloysite. Okay, present with the bentonite. And we have checked plasticity index, and we have checked the whatever criteria has been given for the liner material. It should be 10 to 7%, and we have used the nano clay also up to the 3%. So to minimize the bentonite content, and this is the suitable zone. Okay, this is the, so these you can see here, these value you can see here. So this rectangular and this notation you can see here. This is the slag. Okay, this is the slag with the bentonite. So by using even 10% bentonite, it will give you the lower plasticity index value. Okay, and this is just in the line of the 7% of the plasticity index. But with the use of the it can be improved by using the nano clay. So you can see this too. So to improve the plasticity behavior, more either you use the more bentonite, or you use the less bentonite by using the higher amount of the nano clay. So then the major important parameter for the liner material is the coefficient of permeability. So you can see these two curve will give. This is the slag with the 10% bentonite, and this is the sand with the sand. So both behavior of the sand and the slag is similar with the 10% bentonite. You can see a reduction in the hydraulic conductivity, because initially the hydraulic conductivity of the sand and the slag is -10 to the power -4. So once you add the bentonite, is decreasing drastically, and it is obvious because bentonite is the highly absorbing mineral. It can holds the water. Okay, and it has the less coefficient of permeability or hydraulic conductivity value compared to the both material. So, but here you can see these two curve will give you the idea about the how we can minimize the bentonite by using the small amount of the nano clay. So you can see this curve will give you the idea about the slag using 5% bentonite and the the use of the 2% nanoclay. So it will give you the similar, almost similar K value, hydraulic conductivity value compared to this by using the 10% bentonite. Okay. So if you see the acceptable zone, because it requires the hydraulic conductivity value should be less than 10 to the power minus 7 per centimeter, 10 to the power minus 7 centimeter per second. So you can see these all are the combination which will give you the permissible zone or permissible value in terms of the hydraulic conductivity, and accordingly you can select the dry density and the optimum moisture content. So you can see there is the beneficial effect of the slag on the for the landfill liner, okay, in terms of the hydraulic conductivity as well. So other parameter is the unconfined compressive strength value. So you can see if we have compared with the sand and the slag. So you can see here it is very interesting. Okay, so these three curve, this curve is by using the 5% bentonite. This curve will give you the strength value for the by using the 10% bentonite. So you can see here, this is the sand. This dotted all curve is the sand curve. Okay, so compared to the sand, slag will give you the more strength value, more strength. Okay, so this is the beneficial effect of the using the slag in the replacement of the sand. Okay, so you can see by using the 5% bentonite only, it will give you the strength up to the 900 or 800 around kPa. Okay, but with the application of the small amount of the nanoclay of 1% to the 3% with the curing period, you can see there is a drastically increase in the strength. It will give you the strength up to the 1500 kPa, like 1.5 MPa. And if you see the sand, if you compare, it will give you below 200 kPa. So this is the beneficial effect of using the slag to improve the strength behavior of the soil, because slag will give you the why improvement in the strength will happen, because slag also contains some amount of the calcium. Okay, it will help in the pozzolanic reaction, and also slag is the angular the well graded material compared to the sand, and its particle shape is interlocking, so it will give you the the good bonding, or it will give you the it will form the compacted matrix. Okay, so that's why we have seen the this one. Okay, so this is the final of my lecture today, and summarizing in 2 points. Yes, we have to utilize the waste material like the fly ash, marble dust, and all those things. It will give you the better result in terms of the stabilization, and also it is economical because it is a waste material. And okay, so but yes, obviously we have to do the detailed investigation before its utilization, because sometimes it will give you an adverse effect also depending upon the environmental condition. So this is my end of this presentation, and yes, you can ask me the question if you have any queries. Okay.
Any participants may ask. One question is in the chat box also. Request me to kindly refer that. So question answer section, just adjacent to chat box. The question is this way: is there any scope for statistics and reliability methodology applications in the field of ground improvement geotechniques?
Yes, actually it is very interesting and a genuine question. Okay, so because nowadays reliability approach is very much effective, because if you see many researches nowadays in many publications in the field of the ground improvement by using this reliability approach. Okay, to get the idea about the to utilize the different type of the waste material and their optimum quantity as well, and their consequences on the different parameters. So many research are going on, and you can find many paper, okay, in different journals. Okay.
Any other participant? Any other participant may unmute himself or herself and directly ask the questions with the expert.
Yes, you can ask me any question. Okay, so if you
I
have
got questions regarding your TGA results.
Mhm.
You showed that there's the limestone has not marble powder is not chemically reacting with the sandstone, but the TGA curve of same composition at 7 and 28 days was drastically different for all the materials. Can
Yes,
you
yes.
explain why it happened?
Yeah. It is a good question. Okay, so yeah, I told you like it's not material because uh, uh, because we have seen we have seen in unconfined compressive strength or whatever, because it will not give you the drastically improvement in the strength compared to the by using the lime and all those things. Okay, and many researchers, but in TGA we have seen there is a loss of the masses. So first you have to understand what is the TGA. Okay, so why mass is decreasing? Because in TGA we have to like we have to use the sample, a small amount of the sample, and we have to heat it. Okay, we have to provide the heat. We have to allow the sample at different temperature up to the 1000 degrees centigrade. You can see here 1000 degrees centigrade is not a small temperature like oven temperature of 100. So once you are keeping the sample at 1000 degrees centigrade, then whatever whatever the either there is the presence of the hydroscopic water or any kind of things are there will be that and if there are the presence of the any mineral which is susceptible towards the temperature. Susceptible towards the temperature means if you increase the temp, depending upon the temperature, there will be the change in the form of the that minerals. So okay, so this is the basic fundamentals of this thermal analysis. So that's why with the increase in the amount of this marble dust contents and depending upon the curing period, okay, we have seen there is a decrease in the mass, or the losses of the mass. Okay, because if you see the loss of the mass, if I can share again so that it will give you the more. Yes. So this one, yeah. So here you can see, yeah. So here you can see. So this is the yes, this is the line. Okay, sorry, this is the marble dust. Total loss in the marble dust with the increase in the temperature you can see. But all this value, whatever, and this is this black this line is the for the soil, and this in between with the soil with the marble dust. Soil is the different amount of the marble dust, like 5%, 25%, and 80% marble dust. Okay, with the different curing period like 7 to 28%. So whatever value we are getting, whatever loss in the mass we are getting with this mixer is less than whatever loss we observed at the marble dust. Okay, means whatever because if there is the production, if there is the formation of the cementitious compound, then maybe the losses will be more compared to the losses of the mass whatever we have observed in the marble dust. Okay, but in the same time with the curing period, if you see here, there as you also nicely observed these things. There is a slide. If you see this one, like these two line. Okay, so these two line. Okay, these two line. This is the 7 day. This is 28 day. So that's why I told you it is the matter of the debate. Either this calcium is fully inert material, or it will give you some it has some cementitious characteristic. It can take part into the cementitious characteristic. This is the matter of the debate, because if you see the literature, some researcher, some literature says it will take you whatever calcium is there. It will also act as the cementitious compound. Okay, it will also take part in the chemical reaction. But many literature suggested it is an inert material. So yes, this is a matter of the debate. I already told you. Okay, and this is good things. Okay, it's a good observation. Okay. Any other question? Any other question?
If there are no other questions,
Sir, if
maybe
other participants don't have question, can I ask one more?
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
Sanchit.
ask.
Yes, sir.
Sir, the results you have shown for different industrial waste suggest that inert materials are giving better mechanism of soil stabilization than reactive materials. Am I drawing the right conclusion?
No. It's you are saying like different perspectives. So like first, you have to understand about the inert material. What is inert material and what is the reactive material? Okay. So inert material is the material which will not take part in any reaction. Okay, any reaction means whatever reaction we are talking about, the cationic sand or the flocculation or the formation of the cementitious compound, that will not take part. Okay, it is inert material. But reactive material is a material which will react in the presence of the other kind of the stabilizer like the lime and the cement. So both are the different things. Whenever you are using the inert material, and whatever improvement is there, that is due to the that other phenomenon, other mechanism is there, like either improvement in the gradation of the curve, in gradation of the soil matrix, soil matrix, or the particle matrix, or due to the having the beneficial characteristic of the that material, like for example, I have told you, like marble dust, it has good shear strength capacity. So both are things, okay, and both mechanisms are different. So you cannot say directly like it is inert material is good compared to this one. So yes, mechanism is different. Yes, whatever improvement you will get will be different, and accordingly we have to use the things. Okay. Okay. So any other?
It has been a marathon session by Professor Jha, and
Thank you.
we definitely we are overwhelmed to see this comprehensive research work, and I, on behalf of the university, Rajasthan Technical University, and on my personal behalf, I extend my heartfelt thanks and request your patronage in future also. Thank you very much for sparing time.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Sure, sir. Sure.
And,
Thank you very much. It's a great opportunity for me to interact with all the audiences. Okay. So yes, obviously, if anybody are interested to collaborate or work together, I'm always happy. Okay. So hopefully we'll meet. Okay, in the future as well.
thank you so much.
So thank you very much, Professor Agarwal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you all participants to be with us in 100 plus number for whole the session, and I request all of you to join again at around 3:20 p.m. For the session on waste plastics in road construction. Jha Saab, thank you so much for being with us.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. So
I'm closing this session with your permission, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. You can log off.